Welcome back to Swine TV, the US Swine Health Improvement Plan with Tyler Holck from Iowa State University. Welcome to the program, Tyler.
Thanks, Jim. Glad to be here.
We got some important things to talk about, but let's get to your brief background, how you got started in the industry.
Well, if you go way back, my dad and I had a 250 sow operation, farrow to finish in Northwest Iowa, and which was a big operation back in the 70s. And also, my dad and uncles had a feed business, a regional feed business. So I would describe it. I kind of grew up in the swine industry. I went to South Dakota State for an animal science degree, and then I went on to Iowa State for a veterinary degree, and had the great opportunity to work with Al Lehman right out of school at Swine Graphics. And I guess the way I would describe is I've been serving our US swine industry ever since.
What are you doing now with Iowa State?
So at Iowa State, at the end of 2020, I took on a position as senior program coordinator for the US Swine Health Improvement Plan. Was asked to help in the initial development and now in the growth of this plan, which we'll talk about more.
So I think that's why you're here today, spreading the gospel. So talk to me about the US Swine Health Improvement Plan.
Yeah, well, Jim, it's a national health certification plan. It's a program that really we haven't had in the US before. And the whole intent is that it provides some uniformity across our industry as we approach biosecurity, traceability, and surveillance that gets put in a format where there's actually certification at the producer and packer level.
Are there threats currently, Tyler?
Yeah, so our focus initially with this program is on ASF and CSF, which are foreign animal diseases. And certainly there are threats with those. ASF continues to travel around the globe, and the last thing we want is for that virus to get into the US. So the threat is that that would come in and it would terribly disrupt our international trade markets. So yeah, I would consider that a very big threat.
Anything new with the program, or in general, what does the industry need to know?
Yeah. It's new. Well, it's because the program's new. And I think the most important thing is to think about this as a collaboration of producers, meaning producers, packers from the industry with state and federal officials. And that collaboration to create a health certification program, it's unique. We've never had that in the US swine industry. So from that standpoint, the whole program and that approach is new. We are using the NPIP, or the National Poultry Improvement Plan, as a model as we build this. And that program's been in place for over 90 years and serving the poultry industry very well.
Can you talk to us about preparing to safeguard animal health?
Yeah. And so when I think about preparing to safeguard animal health, that's where this whole health certification comes in play. So our program, again, modeled after the NPIP, basically takes it down to the producer site. So each individual site is enrolled and then further certified at the state level in this program. So the preparedness, or the safeguarding, is getting more and more of the industry involved in this program, and then walking through in a very democratic way, well, what needs to be the content or the standards for that program, again, based on biosecurity, traceability, and surveillance.
Can you talk about the pilot project moving forward?
Yeah, so our pilot project really started at the end of 2020. I came on board along with Giovanni Trevisan and a few others from Iowa State, working to build content. So simultaneously building content around these key technical pillars of biosecurity, traceability, and surveillance. But also now in the last year and a half, building awareness in the industry so that we can get more and more producers and packers enrolled and then further certified. So looking forward, I would say we need to continue to work in both of those areas. I'm excited to share that we've already got 68% of the U.S. breeding herd enrolled in U.S. ship and 61% of the growing pigs. So if I think about, well, what's next or where do we go from here, is we need to continue to finish out the rest of the industry and get the rest of the industry involved. And we also need to continue to get alignment with the industry, which we do at what we call a House of Delegates meeting with, well, what are the key standards around biosecurity, traceability, and surveillance that will safeguard our industry?
So getting the rest of the people on board, is it just continuing to spread the word? Is it what's the challenge?
Well, I think awareness is a big part. I mean, as we all know, our industry is segmented into different sizes and shapes of the industry. So we've got large producers, we got all the way down to exhibition and show pig, which, by the way, I saw at the Iowa State Fair yesterday. Well, we need all aspects of the industry. So awareness is important, and encouragement. So sort of a momentum that gets built by knowing, excuse me, that we're already at over 60%. Well, hopefully the rest of the industry says, well, this is real and we need to do that. And this needs to be everybody. So we've got some ideas. We've got some plans to engage more and more at the state level through pork associations. This will eventually be a USDA program, and the USDA can certainly put their efforts into education and awareness. So over the next couple of years, I would see it building out both technically with the content, but also moving from 60 up to 70 up to 80% of the industry and beyond.
So while we have you here, Tyler, what is the Tyler Holck opinion on biosecurity?
Tyler Holck opinion on biosecurity. Good one. Good one, Jim. Well, I'm actually going to spin it back to US ship, because we, in 2021, the first year that we were developing, Monty Tormorell from Minnesota was leading biosecurity, and that was a broad topic. And where we came out by the end of that year was, well, really, minimally, we're going to break that down into three areas. There's site biosecurity. So when we think of that, think of secure pork supply plan, which we're adopting into the US ship program. And what do I do at the site level? There's also looking at feed biosafety. So we consider that a component of biosecurity. And we need to be fully aware of, well, what's coming into our farms as far as feed ingredients or as finished feeds, and do we have confidence that we're not introducing any viruses or pathogens through our feed. And then the final area that we broke biosecurity out was in live haul sanitation or truck wash. And when you look at other export markets, take Netherlands, for example, they're far ahead of us in what they do for sanitation of their trucks. And that's not something that we're going to answer immediately with this program, but we have now a platform where we can bring the industry together and say, well, how do we address that? How do we get more truck wash capacity in this industry to therefore help us with biosecurity? So those would be examples of further breaking out biosecurity.
So you think in the US we need more awareness for truck wash?
Awareness could be a component of it. I think we need the political will, the intent to say we need to do better, and we need to figure out how it is we cost effectively build that into our industry so that we've got more capacity. We likely, I mean, some estimates say we're at only 50% of what we need for truck wash capacity. So where does the capital come to build that out? And how is it that we as an industry agree that, well, that we need to then be compliant with that and use those to diminish, minimize the spread of disease?
When we talk about US ship, are there three pillars potentially that you can list that people can connect with?
Yeah. So, I mean, those three pillars, the technical pillars for a health certification program, or biosecurity that we just walked through, which we further break into feed biosafety and site biosecurity and truck wash. But there's also traceability. So can we get better in industry at knowing the movements and knowing where the pigs are at? For example, our very first year, we have what we call House of Delegates, where we bring all the states together that are participating, literally voting on the standards. Well, we had a guest come down from Canada, Jeff Clark, where in Canada they have pig trace. And we have a lot to learn from pig trace, for example, because that's been something that's been in place in Canada for several years. And I think it serves Canada, the Canadian swine industry, very well with knowing the movements of their pigs. So traceability is another area. And then the third pillar for us is surveillance. Now, right now for surveillance, when we're focused just on ASF and CSF, there's a lot that's being done as far as, well, what would be the appropriate samples? What do we already have ongoing at our diagnostic labs, and making sure we leverage what we have in place. I will put a plug in that everything we've talked about on SHIP so far has been ASF and CSF, foreign animal disease. But there's the potential for this platform to be built out for domestic disease or endemic diseases. So for example, utilizing US SHIP down the road to help eradicate PED, that could be a potential. When we say US SHIP is modeled after NPIP on the poultry side, the vast majority of their efforts in poultry is actually on their domestic diseases and stopping the vertical transmission of disease there. So the third pillar is surveillance, which right now it's fairly focused while we're on ASF and CSF, but that one could expand more if we move on towards PED, for example.
Well, this is great, Tyler. Lots of potential here for people to focus on. Now, with this, should we focus on a national strategy as opposed to regional?
Yeah, I think, again, modeling after the NPIP, which was started in 1935, and it served the poultry industry very well. That's a national program. Now it's administered at the state level, and they have all 50 states participating. So when you think about how our US regulatory system is aligned, well, there's state animal health officials at every state. So that serves the NPIP very well. That's what we're modeling for US SHIP. When we started this program, this pilot, 2.5 years ago, a little over 2.5 years ago, we were targeting 10 to 15 states in the first 2 years. We're already at 33 states, which includes all of the major swine states that are participating in US SHIP. So I think it's a national level where we come together and we say, are we aligned with what the critical content or technical standards are for biosecurity, traceability, and surveillance? And yet it's administered at the state level, which eventually gives you flexibility. Well, what happens in one state versus another, or the potential, I guess, for some regional efforts. But again, modeling after NPIP, we have to start with a national platform.
We had Mike Walker on from Christensen Farms to talk about the House of Delegates meeting in September. Is there anything that you want to talk about for that, Tyler?
Well, we're excited about that. Yeah, and Mike's done a great job. We have governance called a General Conference Committee, and Mike's been leading that with 15 other members of the industry. And the House of Delegates, again, modeled after the NPIP, brings together all of the participating states. They're allocated voting delegates. So we have at this, which will be our third House of Delegates meeting. We had one in 2021, 2022, and now this one coming up in September of 2023. Each of the 33 states have voting delegates. We'll come together. We'll spend some time just reviewing some of the information that was gathered and learned. And then there's specific proposals. So there's 6 standards, which if passed, those will be voted on. If passed, those will actually be requirements for producers and packers to follow to be certified in the program. And there's also 4 other resolutions, and a resolution, if passed, would lead to further work in a specific area. One example would be further focus on the exhibition swine industry segment and how can we reach more of those people to be involved in the program. So we're excited. That's coming up here just in a few weeks. We expect a lot of folks, just like we had the first 2 years, that will come together and do a lot of discussion, some debating, and then eventually on the final morning, there will be a business meeting where they vote on these standards and resolutions.
Stay tuned, right, Tyler?
That's right. That's right. Stay tuned.
Final question. Are we ready as an industry for challenges ahead? If not, what do we need to do? And if so, what makes us prepared?
Well, I think I've heard many of our industry leaders say, we're better prepared now than we were 20 years ago, but we're never fully prepared. And I would agree with that. I think US SHIP provides a new platform, a new health certification program that allows us to think about, well, what about the rest of the industry if we have an incursion? So a lot of the effort, which is really good, has been through what's called a red book, the USDA's red book, which says, well, if we have an outbreak of a foreign animal disease, we're going to create a control area, and this is what we're going to do. What we haven't talked about in as an industry is what do we do with everywhere else? And that business continuity, the ability to move pigs, the ability to have international trade is critical. And so I would say we need to continue to move this program and our other planning forward. We're never done with planning. But I feel good that we've now got this initial pilot established. It's moving rapidly towards a codified USDA program, which can serve us well with our USDA trade and our trading partners down the road.
Well, Tyler Holck, keep up the great work, and thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks very much, Jim. Appreciated being on.